The mining crew that abandoned Ferris 9 left with their pockets full and their mouths stitched shut, literally, in the case of the foreman. They found him 3 systems away, lips sealed with surgical precision, eyes wild with a fear no drunk could wash away. 30 years on, folks still whisper about what waits in the deep shafts. I never put stock in ghost stories, until someone paid me enough credit to retire twice over, just to break into the one place nobody's supposed to go. Sand crunched under my boots as I stepped off the ramp of my ship, the Tumbleweed. The air hit me like a furnace blast, carrying the metallic tang that gave Ferris 9 its nickname, Rust Bucket. Iron particles danced in the dying sunlight, glittering like tiny embers caught in the dusky haze. My Atmo filter clicked on automatically, scrubbing the worst of the iron dust before it hit my lungs, whirring with effort as the fine powder tried to clog its mechanisms. The settlement sprawled before me, a graveyard of abandoned mining equipment repurposed into ramshackle homes, their walls bleeding rust-colored streaks from the constant abrasion of metal-laden winds. Lights flickered behind mismatched viewports, some salvaged from derelict ships, others crafted from translucent mineral deposits mined from the moon's surface. "Fancy meeting you here, Rook." The voice came from behind a stack of corroded shipping containers, smooth as expensive whiskey and twice as dangerous. My hand drifted to the peacemaker on my hip, fingers brushing the worn grip that had molded itself to my palm over years of hard use. "Show yourself, Marshal." Marshal Eliza Ward stepped out, all 6 feet of her, clad in a dust-streaked uniform bearing the insignia of the Coalition territories. The silver badge on her chest caught what little sunlight filtered through the rusty haze, winking like a distant star. She didn't look happy to see me. Then again, she never did. "Thought we had an understanding after that business on Europa," she said, one hand resting casually on her own sidearm. A Coalition-issue pulsar that could vaporize internal organs without breaking the skin. I'd seen the aftermath once. Wasn't eager for a repeat demonstration. "We do. I stay out of Coalition space. You don't shoot me." I gestured at the desolate landscape surrounding us, the jagged silhouettes of mining derricks jutting from the horizon, like the ribs of some enormous beast. "This rock's been abandoned for decades. Doesn't count." She snorted, the sound distorted through her filter mask. "Nothing's abandoned, Rook. Just forgotten, until someone remembers it's valuable." Her eyes narrowed, crow's feet crinkling at the corners, the kind you get from squinting into too many alien suns. "Who hired you?" "Client confidentiality." My standard answer, delivered with a shrug that suggested indifference, but didn't quite sell it. Ward stepped closer, close enough that I could see the tiny flecks of gold in her irises, a cosmetic enhancement popular among Coalition officials who wanted to intimidate without saying a word. "Must be paying well if you're willing to tangle with the Ferris fever." She tapped her filter mask, the gesture almost gentle. "Old-timers say it gets in your brain, makes you see things, hear things. Some say it shows you the truth you've been running from your whole life. Good thing I don't spook easy." I tried to sound convincing, even as a cold feeling slithered down my spine. The wind kicked up, howling through the canyon of abandoned structures, carrying whispers that might have been voices or might have been my imagination. "That's what Talon said before they found him screaming about ghosts in the mine shaft." She thumbed toward the pockmarked cliff face behind the settlement, where dark tunnel entrances gaped like hungry mouths in the dusk light. "His crew left him here. Settlement doctor couldn't do much but sedate him before he clawed his own eyes out. Said something was written on the backs of them. Something he couldn't stop reading." I kept my face neutral, but my pulse quickened. Talon was cut from the same cloth as me, a freelancer who'd take any job for the right price, with nerves of steel and a reputation for delivering where others failed. If something had broken him. "You trying to scare me off, Marshal?" I asked, voice steady despite the unease coiling in my gut. "Just telling you what you're walking into." She studied me for a moment, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. Then she reached into her pocket and handed me a small metallic disc, its surface etched with coalition security patterns that shifted and changed as I turned it in my hand. "Emergency beacon. You trigger it, I'll come running. Might even get there before whatever's in those tunnels gets to you." I pocketed the disc, feeling its weight against my thigh. A lifeline I hadn't expected. "Your concern is touching." Not concern, professional courtesy. Her mouth quirked in what might have been a smile on someone else. "We're a dying breed, Rook. The frontier's shrinking. Soon there won't be any place left for people like us. Too wild for civilization, too principled for the syndicates." She turned to leave, dust swirling around her boots. "Whatever you're looking for, Rook, ask yourself if it's worth dying for. Or worse." "Worse?" I called after her. She paused but didn't turn around. Talon's still alive, still screaming 3 years on. That's the worse. I watched her disappear into the settlement, a collection of rusted prefabs and converted mining equipment squatting in the shadow of the mine. Whoever built this place never intended it to last. The miners came, stripped the easy ore, then left when profits thinned. Only the stubborn and desperate remained, eking out an existence by scavenging what was left. A distant thunder growled across the landscape. Not weather, but the ancient atmosphere processors struggling to maintain breathable air. The machines had been running on auxiliary power for decades, their effectiveness diminishing with each passing year. In another decade, maybe less, Ferris 9 would be uninhabitable. The settlers knew it. I could see it in their hollow eyes as they scurried between buildings, wrapped in layers of scavenged cloth against the metal-laden wind. My contact was waiting at the Rusty Nail, the settlement's only bar, a converted ore processor that still hummed with energy from ancient generators. The massive sorting drums had been repurposed into brewing vats, surrounded by a patchwork of salvaged tables and chairs. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the smell of synthetic whiskey, the kind that could blind you if the distiller got the formula wrong. A handful of locals nursed drinks, their eyes following me as I crossed to a corner booth. Conversations died as I passed, then resumed in hushed tones once I was out of earshot. The man who called himself Smith wore a clean pressure suit in a place where everything was covered in dust. Corporate type trying to look inconspicuous and failing spectacularly. His fingernails were too clean, his posture too straight. The calluses on his hands were in all the wrong places, a desk jockey pretending to be a field man. "You're late," he said, not looking up from his datapad. His voice had that core world accent, all crisp consonants and rounded vowels. Out here, it might as well have been a neon sign announcing outsider. Got delayed by the welcoming committee. I slid into the seat across from him, ignoring the synthetic leather that cracked under my weight. Marshal Ward seems to think there's something in those mines worth keeping people out. Smith's eyes darted around nervously, pale blue irises reflecting the dim bar lights. A vein pulsed in his temple, betraying anxiety his forced calm couldn't quite mask. "The Coalition doesn't have jurisdiction here. This moon is unclaimed territory. Tell that to the woman with the pulse rifle." I leaned forward, the table creaking between us. "You neglected to mention the Ferris fever." His fingers twitched against the datapad, smearing the display with sweat. Local superstition. Nothing more. The words were dismissive, but the tremor in his voice told a different story. Cut the shit, Smith. What am I really walking into? I rested my hand on the table, revealing the edge of the holster beneath my coat. Not a threat, exactly. Just a reminder. He slid a memory crystal across the table, the motion practiced and precise. Everything you need to know is in here. Schematics of the vault, security protocols, extraction points. The crystal glowed with a faint internal light, data patterns shifting beneath its translucent surface. I picked it up, holding it to the light. Halcyon corporate encryption, top tier. The kind used for weapons research or biotech. And what exactly am I extracting? A container, small enough to carry. Black box with the Halcyon Mining Corporation logo. His voice dropped to a whisper, forcing me to lean closer. The scent of expensive cologne couldn't quite mask the sour smell of fear. Do not open it. Do not scan it. Just bring it to the coordinates I provided. Double my fee. What? His corporate composure cracked, eyes widening as if I'd just suggested we strip naked and dance on the tabletops. You heard me. Half now, half on delivery. I pocketed the crystal, watching his reaction carefully. People who tell me not to look inside packages are usually the ones I should be most wary of. Smith's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching beneath the too smooth skin of a man who'd had rejuvenation treatments no honest work could pay for. But he transferred the credits without further argument. They appeared on my wrist display, the numbers high enough to make my throat tighten. Whatever was in that vault, someone wanted it badly. The vault hasn't been opened in 30 years, he said, gathering his composure. Whatever security systems they left might still be active. Might be, or are, I pressed, but his eyes slid away from mine. He didn't answer. Couldn't, or wouldn't. I stood up, the chair scraping against the metal floor. I'll contact you when I have the package. Wait, Smith said, reaching into his pocket. He produced a small metallic vial and set it on the table. Take this. Insurance. I raised an eyebrow. What is it? Antipsychotic. Military grade. If you start experiencing symptoms, it might buy you enough time to get out. My mouth went dry. You said the fever was superstition. I said a lot of things. He pushed the vial toward me. Just take it. I pocketed the vial, not liking the implications one bit. Anything else you're not telling me? Nothing that would make you stay. Smith's eyes met mine for the first time, and I saw something worse than fear there. Resignation, as if he were looking at a dead man. Dawn on Ferris 9 wasn't so much a sunrise as a gradual lightening of the rusty haze. I loaded my gear onto a salvaged mining crawler, power cells, cutting tools, climbing equipment, and enough firepower to hold off a small army. The crawler was a bulky six-wheeled monstrosity with reinforced treads designed to navigate the treacherous terrain around the mines. Its engine growled like a living thing, belching black smoke that was swallowed by the perpetual rust-colored fog. I'd studied Smith's schematics half the night, committing the layout to memory. The mine was a labyrinth of tunnels bored deep into the moon's crust, following veins of rare minerals worth a fortune on the core worlds. But the deepest tunnels, the ones leading to the vault, were missing from public records. Smith's crystal contained security codes that would grant access, but something told me the company's safeguards would be the least of my problems. The main entrance to the mine was sealed with heavy blast doors, the Halcyon Corporation logo barely visible under decades of rust. I bypassed it, heading instead for a maintenance shaft marked on Smith's schematics. The less obvious my approach, the better my chances of avoiding whatever had reduced Talon to a screaming husk. The crawler's engines whined as we climbed the steep path toward a narrow fissure in the cliff face. Loose stones clattered beneath the treads, some tumbling into crevices that seemed to have no bottom. My nav system pinged. This was the spot. I killed the engines and climbed down, the silence pressing in around me as the echoes faded. In the quiet, I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping from somewhere deep within the rock. Too regular to be natural, too persistent to be imagination. I checked my weapons. Peacemaker holstered at my hip, pulse rifle slung across my back, and a scattergun strapped to my thigh. More firepower than I usually carried, but Ward's warning echoed in my mind. Whatever's in those tunnels. The maintenance shaft was hardly more than a crack in the rock, partially collapsed from years of neglect. I squeezed through, my filter mask working overtime as dust billowed around me. The shaft narrowed until I had to turn sideways, the rough stone scraping against my back and chest. Claustrophobia tickled the edges of my mind, a sensation I normally kept buried. 20 feet in, the natural rock gave way to reinforced tunnel walls, the metal corroded but still intact. Ancient glow strips flickered to life as I passed, responding to motion or body heat. Their pale blue light cast eerie shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. I activated my headlamp and checked the schematic on my wrist display. The vault was 2 miles in and 5 levels down, deep in the heart of the moon where the richest ore deposits had been found, and where, according to Smith's intel, the miners had discovered something else entirely. The first mile was uneventful, just endless tunnels and the hollow sound of my footsteps echoing off metal walls. Abandoned equipment littered the passage, rock drills, sample containers, personal effects left in a hurry, a child's toy, incongruously bright amid the rust and dust. Mining colonies often brought families I knew, children born beneath alien skies, never knowing the worlds their parents had left behind. But as I descended to the second level, the air changed, became heavier, almost syrupy in my lungs despite the filter. My mask registered traces of methane, hydrogen, and something else it couldn't identify, a compound that caused the analysis screen to flicker and distort. "System, analyze unknown compound," I said, my voice sounding flat in the dead air. "Analysis incomplete. Compound contains organic elements inconsistent with mining operations." The AI's usually monotone voice seemed to waver, static cutting through her words. "Recommend retreat to surface for system recalibration. Organic." That raised the hair on my neck. Nothing organic should be growing this deep, in an environment scoured by radiation and toxic minerals. I continued forward, each step more deliberate than the last. Level 3 brought the first signs of trouble. The tunnel ahead was blocked by a cave-in. Recent by the look of it. The dust hadn't fully settled, and the torn metal edges were shiny where they'd been ripped apart. Not collapse, I realized. Explosion. Someone had deliberately sealed this passage. I ran my hand along the edges of the debris, finding scorch marks consistent with mining charges. Standard procedure for shutting down unsafe tunnels, or containing something that shouldn't get out. I backtracked, finding a maintenance ladder that dropped to level 4. The metal rungs groaned under my weight, flakes of rust drifting down into the darkness below. As I climbed down, I heard it, a soft scraping sound, like metal on metal. I froze, one hand on the ladder, the other on my peacemaker. The sound didn't repeat. After a full minute of silence, I continued down, each rung creaking louder than the last, announcing my presence to whatever might be listening. Level 4 was flooded with a foot of stagnant water. My boots splashed as I waded through, sending ripples across the surface. The liquid was thick and oily, leaving iridescent trails that gleamed in my headlamp's beam. It smelled wrong. Not like water at all, but something organic and vaguely sweet, like overripe fruit. My headlamp caught movement in the dark water. Something darted away from the light, leaving a wake that couldn't be explained by my own passage. I trained my beam on the spot, but whatever it was had vanished. Warning: biological contaminants detected. What kind? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Unknown classification. Genetic structure does not match any known species in database. The AI paused, and when it spoke again, its voice had dropped an octave. Mutation detected in sample. Cellular structure is evolving in real time. I increased my pace, checking the schematic again. One more level down and half a mile west. The vault would be there. Just get the box and get out. Don't think about what's in the water. Don't think about what's happening to your boots, how the material seems to be dissolving where the liquid touches. The ladder to level 5 was gone, torn away from its moorings. Twisted metal at the top suggested it hadn't broken. It had been ripped out. By something strong. I had to use my climbing gear, rappelling down a 50-foot shaft that opened into a chamber twice the size of the others. As I descended, my light revealed the chamber below. Old mining equipment lay scattered about, covered in a thin film of what looked like black oil. But this wasn't mechanical fluid. It pulsed with its own rhythm, like 1,000 tiny hearts beating in unison. The entire floor was carpeted with the stuff, with small islands of clean metal where equipment had protected the original flooring. I landed on one such island, careful not to touch the black substance. Up close, it writhed with microscopic movement, forming patterns that almost looked like script before dissolving back into chaos. Warning: unknown substance exhibits properties consistent with organic compounds. Caution advised. No shit, I muttered, sweat beading on my forehead despite the chill in the air. My boots left prints in the stuff as I was forced to cross an exposed section. It clung to the soles, stretching into thin strands that reached after me, like grasping fingers before breaking. I could feel it through the material, a strange warmth that didn't belong in the cold depths of the mine. Each step became more difficult than the last, as if the substance were trying to hold me in place. I reached for Smith's vial, the antipsychotic he'd given me. Was I already experiencing symptoms? Was this real, or was my mind fracturing under the influence of whatever had broken Talon? The vault door loomed at the far end of the chamber, a massive circular portal of reinforced durasteel with the Halcyon logo emblazoned in the center. Unlike everything else, it was free of rust and corrosion. It looked brand new, as if it had been installed yesterday rather than decades ago. I approached carefully, scanning for security systems. There were none, at least none active. The control panel beside the door was dark, its screen shattered as if someone had taken a hammer to it. According to Smith's schematics, there should be a manual override. I ran my fingers along the edge of the door until I found it, a small recess concealed behind a panel. Inside was a simple mechanical lever, worn smooth from use. More use than made sense for a vault that was supposedly sealed 30 years ago. Too simple. I hesitated, my hand on the lever. Marshal Ward's warning echoed in my head. So did the story of Talon, screaming about ghosts. Whatever was in this vault had been sealed away for good reason. And maybe it hadn't stayed sealed. But I hadn't come this far to turn back. And the credits Smith had transferred would keep the tumbleweed flying for months, would buy medicine for my sister on Titan, would pay off debts to people who didn't believe in second chances. I pulled the lever. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a series of mechanical clicks reverberated through the chamber as ancient locks disengaged. The vault door shuddered and began to swing open with a sound like a dying animal, a low moan that raised goosebumps along my arms. Stale air rushed out, carrying a smell that made my filter choke and sputter. Sweet and putrid at the same time, like fruit rotting in the sun, mixed with the coppery tang of fresh blood. Filter contaminated. Replacing. My mask hissed as it cycled to a fresh filter. The smell faded, but not the unease crawling up my spine like a living thing with cold, sharp fingers. The vault was smaller than I'd expected, perhaps 30 feet square. My headlamp swept across the space, revealing walls lined with specimen containers. Each held something suspended in clear fluid, things that looked almost human, but weren't. Twisted limbs, extra eyes, mouths where there shouldn't be mouths. Some of the specimens moved slightly in their fluid baths, a twitching of malformed fingers, or the slow blink of an eye that had no business being conscious after so many years. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it, a black box bearing the Halcyon logo. Unlike the sterile white of most corporate tech, this was a dull, light-absorbing black that seemed to draw in not just light, but sound, creating a bubble of silence around it. My target. As I approached, something moved in the darkness behind the pedestal. A figure stepped into the light, or what had once been a figure. It wore the tattered remains of a mining uniform, the fabric fused with its skin in places. Its face was a ruin, features melted and reformed into something that only vaguely resembled human. One eye was normal, a startling blue that looked eerily familiar. The other was a cluster of smaller eyes, all blinking independently. "You shouldn't be here," it said, its voice a rasping whisper that seemed to come from multiple throats. "None of us should." I raised my peacemaker. "Stay back." The thing that had once been a miner tilted what was left of its head. "Gun won't help. Nothing helps once it gets inside you." It gestured with a hand that had too many joints, fingers that forked and rejoined like the branches of a diseased tree. "We've been waiting for you, Rook." A chill ran through me. "How do you know my name?" "We know all the pieces on the board." Its mouth split into a grin that extended far beyond the natural corners, revealing teeth that spiraled inward like a nautilus shell. "Smith sent you. Ward warned you, and still you came." "What's in the box?" I kept my gun trained on the creature, though my hand had begun to shake. Not from fear, though there was plenty of that, but from something else. A vibration that seemed to emanate from the black box itself, resonating with my bones. "The seed." The miner took a shuffling step forward, its movements jerky and uncoordinated, as if its body couldn't quite remember how to walk. "We found it in the deep ore. Thought it was valuable. Didn't know it was alive until it was too late." My eyes flicked to the box. It seemed ordinary enough. A simple container about the size of my forearm. No markings except the logo. No visible lock or interface. But the longer I looked at it, the more I could feel it looking back. "What's it do?" My mouth was dry, the words scraping my throat. "Changes you. Improves you." The miner's voice changed, becoming multiple voices speaking in unison. Layers of sound that shouldn't have come from one throat. Makes you part of something greater, something old. "You don't look improved to me," I gestured at its malformed body with my gun. It laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. This form is temporary, a chrysalis. It spread arms that now ended in something between fingers and tentacles. We tried to contain it, sealed it away. But it changes you, even through the box. Makes you hear things, see things, makes you want to open it. The vibration from the box intensified, and with it came whispers at the edge of my hearing. Not words exactly, but impressions. Promises. Power beyond imagining. Knowledge of stars and civilizations long dead. Evolution beyond the constraints of flesh. I backed away. I'm not opening it, just taking it. They all say that. The miner's voice shifted again, becoming almost melodic, a chorus rather than a single speaker. But you'll open it. Everyone does. The calling is too strong to resist. A pattern of small, puckered mouths opened along the creature's neck, each whispering a different fragment of the same message. Open it. Join us. Become. I lunged for the box, snatching it from the pedestal. It was lighter than it looked, and warm to the touch even through my gloves. Not the warmth of machinery, but of living tissue. I could feel a pulse against my palms, syncing with my own heartbeat, quickening it. The miner screamed, a high, inhuman sound that echoed through the vault and reverberated in my chest cavity. The specimens in their containers began to move more violently, pressing against the glass. Their misshapen limbs and distorted faces suddenly animated with purpose. One container cracked, fluid seeping from a hairline fracture. Then another, and another. I ran, clutching the box to my chest. Behind me, the sound of breaking glass and splashing fluid, wet footsteps slapping against metal, breathing that didn't sound human, too many lungs working at different rhythms. I didn't look back. The vault door was closing, slowly, but inexorably. I dove through the narrowing gap, rolling to my feet on the other side. The door sealed with a final, definitive click. Silence fell, then scratching, as whatever was inside tried to get out. I secured the box in my pack and headed for the exit, moving faster now. The chamber floor was more alive than before, the black substance rippling in waves that followed my footsteps. It reached upward in places, forming pseudopods that stretched toward me before collapsing back into the main mass. The tunnels seemed different on the return journey, narrower, twisting in ways they hadn't before. Twice, I had to backtrack after finding myself in unfamiliar sections. The walls themselves appeared to be moving slightly, contracting and expanding, like the walls of a massive esophagus. Navigation system compromised, recalibrating. My wrist display flickered, the schematic distorting before stabilizing. Warning: structural integrity of surrounding environment in flux. Recommend immediate evacuation. Level 4 was no longer flooded. The water had drained away, revealing a floor covered in the same black film I'd seen below. It pulsed gently, as if breathing. Small mounds had formed in places, each roughly the size and shape of a human head, though thankfully featureless. I avoided touching them, hugging the walls where the floor was still clean. My pack felt heavier now, the box inside radiating heat through the insulated material. Level 3 was now clear of debris, the cave-in entirely gone, as if it had never happened. I paused, disoriented. Had I imagined it? Or had something changed the mine while I was in the vault? A whisper brushed against my ear. Open it. I spun around, peacemaker raised. Empty tunnel stretched behind me, the pale blue glow strips casting more shadow than light. Just a peek. Don't you want to know what's worth so many credits? System, run diagnostic on Atmo filter, I said, my voice echoing strangely in the tunnel, as if I were speaking underwater. Filter functioning within normal parameters, no contaminants detected. So it wasn't in the air, it was in my head. I pressed on, climbing faster. Level 2, Level 1. The tunnel stretched endlessly, though my nav system insisted I was close to the exit. Time seemed to stretch and compress, minutes becoming hours, hours collapsing into heartbeats. Why run? We're already inside you. The voice wasn't mine, but it used my mouth to speak. I felt my hand moving toward the pack of its own accord, fingers grasping for the zipper. The movement was smooth, natural, as if it were my own intention rather than something else's. No! I forced my arm down, fighting against muscles that no longer fully obeyed me. The effort made my head pound, blood rushing in my ears like an ocean. Just open it. See what you're carrying, what's changing you even now. My filter mask suddenly felt restrictive, suffocating. I tore it off before I could stop myself, gulping in the unfiltered air of the mine. It tasted sweet, that same rotting fruit sweetness from the vault, but now with an undertone of spice that made my tongue tingle pleasantly. I stumbled, catching myself against the wall. My hand came away coated in black residue that seemed to writhe against my skin. It sank into my glove, disappearing beneath the material. I felt a cool sensation traveling up my arm, a pleasurable numbness that spread toward my shoulder. Something flickered at the edge of my vision, a figure watching from an intersection ahead. Marshal Ward, her uniform pristine, her eyes worried. Use the beacon, Rook, she said, extending a hand toward me. While you're still you. I fumbled in my pocket, fingers closing around the metal disc she'd given me. One press, and she'd come. One press, and I wouldn't have to face this alone. She'll take the box, take your credits, lock you away like the others. The voice was persuasive, reasonable. It had a point. Ward was coalition, after all. Her loyalty was to order, to containment, not to me. She doesn't understand what we offer, what you could become. The Marshal's image flickered, her face momentarily replaced by something inhuman. A mass of eyes and mouths, all focused on me with hungry intensity. Then she was herself again, extending a hand. Give me the box, Rook, before it's too late. I stood frozen, the beacon in one hand, my other hovering over my pack. The corridor seemed to pulse around me, breathing in time with the thing in my pack, with the thing that was spreading through my veins. How did you know I had it? I asked, forcing clarity through the fog that was settling over my thoughts. Her expression didn't change. Had what? The pieces clicked together, sharp-edged and cold. She couldn't know about the box. I hadn't told her why I was here, and she certainly couldn't be standing in front of me when I'd left her in the settlement. I drew my peacemaker and fired. The blast tore through the apparition, dissipating it like smoke. The sound echoed through the tunnels, followed by screeching that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The walls themselves keened, a high-pitched vibration that made my teeth ache. I ran, no longer caring about stealth or caution. The tunnel walls blurred as I sprinted toward where the exit should be. The screeching grew louder, joined by the sound of many legs skittering along metal. Heavy, wet breathing from multiple throats. I fumbled for Smith's vial, twisting the cap off with shaking hands. The antipsychotic inside was a luminous blue, swirling with darker particles that moved against the liquid's flow. I downed it in one gulp. It burned like pure ethanol, then spread an icy clarity through my system. The fog in my mind receded, if only slightly. The whispering voices grew fainter, though not silent, and the tunnels stabilized, stopped shifting, became predictable paths rather than living, changing things. Finally, I saw it. Natural light filtering through the crack in the rock that led outside. I squeezed through, scraping my shoulders raw against the rough stone. The crawler was where I'd left it, untouched by whatever madness had claimed the mine. I threw myself into the driver's seat and fired up the engines. As the crawler lurched forward, I risked one glance back. Dozens of figures stood at the entrance to the mine. Miners in tattered uniforms, their bodies twisted and changed. Men, women, even what might have been children once, all transformed into something no longer fully human. They watched silently as I drove away, making no move to follow. One raised a hand in farewell, or perhaps warning. The rusty nail was empty when I returned, except for the bartender, who barely glanced up as I entered. No sign of Smith. The settlers themselves seemed to have vanished. The streets deserted except for the occasional skitter of something ducking out of sight as I passed. I checked my comm. A message waited. New coordinates for the delivery, different from the ones he'd originally provided. Somewhere in the asteroid belt beyond Ferris 9's orbit. A mining platform. Halcyon corporate property. My arm throbbed where the black residue had touched my skin. I rolled up my sleeve to find a pattern of dark veins spreading slowly beneath the surface, forming geometric patterns that reminded me of circuit boards, or script in a language too alien to comprehend. The box sat on the table between us, innocent-looking despite everything. My head felt clearer now that I was away from the mine, but occasionally I still heard whispers at the edge of my awareness. Smith's antipsychotic was wearing off, its artificial clarity fading into the background hum of the thing's influence. Take me to the stars. Let me spread. My fingers tapped a rhythm on the tabletop, not one I recognized, not one I consciously chose. The table's surface rippled slightly beneath my touch, as if turning liquid for a moment, before solidifying again. Marshall Ward found me there an hour later, nursing a synthetic whiskey I couldn't taste. Something had changed in my senses. Flavors were muted, but colors were brighter, sharper. I could see ultraviolet patterns on her skin, where radiation from distant stars had marked her over years of space travel. "You look like hell," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Her eyes widened as she took in my appearance, the spreading dark veins now reaching my jawline, the slight iridescence that had come into my irises. "Feel worse." I pushed the box toward her. "You need to destroy this." She eyed it cautiously. "What is it?" "Don't know. Don't want to know." I tapped the side of my head. "It gets in. Makes you see things. Changes you. The Ferris fever. It's real, and it's in there." I nodded toward the box. "Some kind of organism. Seed, they called it. Makes you part of it." Ward pulled a scanner from her belt. "Mind if I—" "Don't." I caught her wrist, my grip stronger than it should have been. I felt bones shifting beneath my fingers. Strength I hadn't possessed before. "Don't scan it. Don't open it. Just put it somewhere no one will find it." She studied my face, professional detachment warring with what might have been concern. "You crossed me before, Rook. How do I know this isn't some game?" I showed her my arm, where the black residue had touched my skin. The pattern of dark veins had formed a complex mandala, pulsing softly with its own inner light. Because I'm compromised, and because I'm giving up a lot of credits to make sure this thing never reaches its destination. Ward was silent for a long moment. Then she produced a containment case from her pack, military grade, designed to suppress radiation, signals, and God knew what else. The Coalition has protocols for this sort of thing, she said, carefully transferring the box to the case without touching it directly. Secure facilities, people who deal with unconventional threats. They won't open it? Not if I classify it properly. She sealed the case with a hiss of compressed air. You need medical attention. I shook my head. Nothing they can do. Not here. I slid a data crystal across the table. Not Smith's. One of my own. Coordinates to where Smith wanted this delivered. Might want to look into who's waiting there. Ward pocketed the crystal. What will you do now? The whispers were getting louder again, pushing me to take back the box, to open it, to let whatever was inside spread to the stars, to worlds beyond counting. I could see it now, a network spanning galaxies, connecting minds across unfathomable distances. Unity, purpose, evolution beyond the constraints of individual existence. It was beautiful and terrifying. Get as far from that thing as possible, I said. See if distance helps. And if it doesn't? I didn't answer. We both knew. She left with the case, and I watched through the grimy window as she loaded it onto her shuttle. Part of me screamed to go after her, to reclaim what I'd found. Another part knew that if I did, I'd doom more than just myself. An hour later, I was back on the tumbleweed, breaking orbit. No destination plotted, just away. The controls felt strange beneath my altered hands, too crude, too binary. I found myself modifying them as I flew, intuitive changes to systems I'd never fully understood before. The ship responded, purring beneath my touch like a living thing. I'd run jobs all across the frontier, smuggling, salvage, the occasional heist. Never asked too many questions about what I was carrying. Maybe that's why Smith picked me. Maybe that's why I'm still alive. For now. The black veins had spread to my shoulder by the time I cleared the system. The whispers had faded to a dull murmur, but they were still there, waiting, patient. In the small mirror of my cabin, I saw my eyes had changed color entirely, iridescent black, like oil on water. Sometimes, when I wasn't looking directly at them, I thought I saw other eyes looking back from within my own. I set course for the outer rim. There are doctors there who don't ask questions. Specialists who deal in things the Coalition pretends don't exist. It's a long shot, but it's the only shot I've got. And if I start heading back toward Ferris 9, or toward those coordinates in the asteroid belt, well, the tumbleweed has an emergency protocol. One final failsafe. A dead man's switch that will send us both into the nearest star if my vital signs fluctuate beyond human norms. Because whatever was in that box, whatever's now in me, it can't be allowed to spread. Some things are meant to stay buried. Some vaults should never be opened. Even now, I can feel it changing me, whispering promises, showing me wonders if I just turn around, go back, find the box, open it. But I've been a drifter long enough to know one truth. Sometimes the only way to survive is to keep moving and never look back. Even if what's chasing you is yourself.